Part two of our win totals is going to feature the ACC plus Notre Dame. We will take a look at this conference to see if Clemson truly is that top team or if there's someone else that's going to spoil that party. We're also going to take a look at Notre Dame to see what we should expect from that team in 2025. We'll start with Boston College, and this is a team that's very intriguing heading into the 2025 season. Bill O'Brien has a lot of work to do. He lost his starting quarterback, but doesn't really feel like maybe that's a loss for that team. This is a team with I think a good core of players, but it's going to come down to depth and how they're able to navigate some of these challenges. The Michigan State game early on does provide a challenge that I don't necessarily know if they're ready for yet, but we will find out quickly. Michigan State's looking to bounce back. That's a tougher game to start the year. You do get Stanford and Cal, so you do have to travel across the country for Stanford before hosting Cal, before you have a pretty tough stretch after that. You go to Pitt. That's a team that started the year strong before kind of fizzling out. You host Clemson. That's a team that everyone expects to win the conference or at least be at the top of it. UConn is a team that could win 10 games this year. That is upset potential for the Huskies to be able to come into Boston College. So that one will be tough as well. You then go to Louisville, host Notre Dame, host SMU, host Georgia Tech, and go to Syracuse. 5.5 feels kind of daunting. Now, if you're able to win those first 4 games, finding 2 more wins gets you obviously to bowl eligibility. I think that you're going to be able to find that. I do think while UConn is a solid team, I trust Bill O'Brien to handle business, and you're able to find a way to pull off an upset here or there. You could see the over. This is one I'm probably staying away from right now. I would probably lean the under though if I have to pick. Cal's another team that sits at 5.5, and it's going to be tough for Justin Wilcox. Cal lost a ton of talent in the transfer portal. They also usher in a new quarterback in Devin Brown. There's plenty of pieces still remaining, but it's going to be tough. The schedule right off the bat gives you opportunities to win games, though. And if there's a team that can come together and figure things out, I trust that Wilcox is able to get his roster organized quite quickly. You do go to Oregon State. That one will be kind of a good measuring stick right off the bat to see how prepared this team is. If they're able to win that, you feel confident about their ability, obviously, to win Texas Southern. But the Minnesota game is really where that first win could help a ton. Minnesota is going through a little bit of transition at quarterback, but that's a tough team to beat. That is a team that'll be really fun to watch in the Big Ten. And Cal's performance there could tell us a lot about whether the over or the under is going to hit. You go to San Diego State and Boston College after that. Those are games that I think Cal definitely can win. The Duke game's a bit challenging to start October. You then host North Carolina. We don't really know what the Tar Heels are going to be. That's a winnable game for sure. Same thing with Virginia Tech and Virginia right after that. Stanford might be one of the worst Power 4 teams in college football, and then SMU. I think if I'm picking right now, I trust that Justin Wilcox should be able to sort things out. I would lean the over here, honestly. Even with all the turnover, I do feel that this team has the right pieces in place to be able to beat that over-under of 5.5 and get back to bowl eligibility. Clemson's over-under is set at 9.5. The Tigers are looking to get back to the college football playoff, and they are looking to potentially win a national championship. The first game against LSU will kind of tell us a lot about this team. That being said, as long as they don't get destroyed, even losing that game doesn't give you a ton of concerns, especially with the talent they have coming back. The schedule isn't exactly the most challenging because you get, Troy right after that. Georgia Tech on the road is going to be a challenge. Syracuse, North Carolina, and Boston College are all winnable games. If you're Clemson, you feel confident about the ability to come away with 3 wins there. You then host SMU to get a rematch of the ACC championship. That'll be a really fun game to watch as well. This is kind of a tough stretch here. SMU, Duke, Florida State, and Louisville. That is going to be an intriguing stretch. Now, you do get a couple weeks between SMU and Duke, but Duke, Florida State, and Louisville could be a tough stretch before you get Furman, and then you go to South Carolina. Now, this is a team that I expect to hit the over. I do think that they are going to be a fun team to watch. They will definitely contend for a national championship. They have all the right pieces coming back. The LSU game will tell us a lot. If it's a tight game, you feel confident about their ability to win the rest of those games. SMU, Duke, and Louisville are probably your biggest concerns in conference play. And then the South Carolina game at the end of the season. That being said, it was really hard for me to confidently say that this team will lose 3 games or more. So I would say if you're betting on Clemson, the over, it feels a little bit better. Really, actually, a lot a bit better, because you're going to really struggle to find 3 losses on this schedule. Now, I think that Duke is a very slept on team. That's a team that has an intriguing player in Darian Mensah coming in from Tulane. You also have a defense that I don't think gets enough love. This is a defense that will be really tough to beat and move the ball against, and Manny Diaz deserves a ton of credit. 6.5, when I initially saw this, it felt like that was kind of disrespectful in a way. And when you look at the schedule, it kind of feels that way if you feel confident about this team. Now, the Elon game will be a win. Then you host Illinois. That is going to give us a good indication of where this team is at. You're going to face a really tough defense in Illinois. That offense should be really fun to watch as well. That'll be a good game for Duke to really tell us where they're actually at. You then go to Tulane. You go back to Darian Mensah's former school. That will be a tough one as well. They have a ton of turnover at Tulane, but that's still going to be tough. NC State's looking to bounce back, but that's a game that Duke definitely has the ability to win. Same with road trips to Syracuse and Cal, but those are 2 road trips that are very difficult because you're playing in the Dome. That's a tough place to win. And then you go across country to play Cal. You then host Georgia Tech and go to Clemson. Those are 2 tough teams to play, 2 teams that could be at the top of the ACC. And then you go to UConn, a team that we talked about earlier in this video as potentially having the ability to win at 10 games. Now, Duke is definitely a better team, but don't sleep on UConn. Virginia, North Carolina, Wake Forest allow you to get wins. I really like the over here. I think that there are plenty of winnable games, and 6.5 feels pretty low to me. Florida State is looking to bounce back in a big way, and honestly, just making a bowl game should be a really successful year. 6.5 is the win total, and honestly, that might be tough to get. Now, you should start the year, honestly, 3-1 before you host Miami. That'll be a good measuring stick to see where you're at. Now, 6.5 does seem pretty daunting, but if you already have 3 wins and you're heading into Miami and Pitt with that 3-1 record, yeah, you might be 3-3, but then you get Stanford and Wake Forest to get 2 more wins. You then go to Clemson. That's going to be a tough test. You then get Virginia Tech and NC State, 2 teams looking to figure things out. And then you go to Florida. So 7 wins is definitely hard to get to, but I do like this team's ability to get to a bowl game. Georgia Tech's over-under is set at 7.5. The Yellow Jackets were kind of a surprise of the ACC last year, and they are looking to do it once again. They get a good opportunity right off the bat, and 2 opportunities early in the season. They go to Colorado. That'll be an intriguing game because you're playing in a hostile environment. You're going to the Buffs to play a team that honestly feels disrespected by so many people. That'll be a tough game to win, but Colorado did lose quite a bit of talent, and Georgia Tech has some stability having their quarterback and running back returning, and their defense feels like it's in good hands. You then get Gardner Webb. If you start the year 1-0, you're definitely going 2-0. If you're 2-0 going into the Clemson game, you feel confident, but Clemson's going to be a tough one. This is not beating Florida State last year like you did and surprising everybody. It's a much tougher test. I do envision that being a loss, but then you get Temple, Wake Forest, and Virginia Tech after that. Georgia Tech is in a much better place than those 3 programs right now. But again, we'll know more about those teams as the season progresses. You do feel confident about this team's ability to win those 3. And then at that point, if you're sitting at 5-1, you feel really good heading into the second half of the season. A road trip to Duke will be challenging. Hosting Syracuse gives you another opportunity for a win. Not that the Duke game's not winnable, but you feel good about what this team can do at home versus going to Duke against that defense. At NC State and Boston College could be challenging. Those are road tests, but I feel confident again that Brenke has this team in a great position. Hosting Pitt and then the Georgia game is tough. So if you're not at the win total of 8 at this point, it might be tough to find wins, especially against Georgia. If you're looking for your 8th win against Georgia, probably not going to happen. I like the over here for Georgia Tech, and it'll be fun to see how this team shakes out in 2025. The Louisville Cardinals are an intriguing team purely because Jeff Brom's running the show. The Cardinals definitely have the ability to get off to a hot start, especially when you face Eastern Kentucky, James Madison, and Bowling Green at home. Now, the JMU game, I'm very intrigued to watch. The Cardinals are the better team, but James Madison has their sights set on potentially pulling off an upset and jump-starting their run to the college football playoff. You then go to Pitt and host Virginia. So a 5-0 start is definitely possible. There are some tough tests, obviously, for different reasons, JMU and Pitt. But a 5-0 start should definitely be possible, unless Virginia is drastically better than they were last year. A road trip to Miami is going to be a challenge for sure, but then you get 3, I don't want to say easier games because it's not easy to win football games in 2025, but you get Boston College, Virginia Tech, and Cal. Those are games that you could definitely find ways to win. And at that point, if you're able to get wins in those games, you feel confident heading into the final 3 games of the season. Now, hosting Clemson could be really intriguing. It depends on the confidence level. If Miller Moss is slinging it and he's really loving being in this Jeff Brom offense, you feel pretty good about what the Louisville Cardinals can do against Clemson. You then have a road trip to SMU. Is SMU going to be the same team they were last year? That's another big question. Kentucky is looking to rebuild in 2025. They are looking to bounce back. They could be struggling as well. So while the 8.5 win total does seem daunting, you can see the over hitting for sure. But honestly, I think there are too many question marks for me right now for me to confidently lean to the over. I'd probably just say the under, but that still could be 8-4. We're going to know real quick if Miami is the real deal or not. We're going to find out real quick if this is a team that is going to compete for a national championship, for the ACC championship or not. The first game against Notre Dame will tell us a lot. How they play in that game pretty much determines how we feel about this team going forward. Now, if they do find a way to win that game, you feel confident about their ability to kind of breeze through this schedule. And if they're able to handle business, you don't have to face Clemson. You get Bethune-Cookman, you get USF. You do play Florida at home, but if DJ Lagway is truly banged up, that might be a different game than we anticipate. There obviously are some concerns with some of the new players coming into the passing attack from Miami, so it could be a little bit of time before you see this team truly mesh together and gel. But that's a winnable game. Then you go to Florida State, Louisville after that, Stanford. You go to SMU. That's another team that made the playoff last year. Then you get Syracuse, NC State, at Virginia Tech, at Pitt. Honestly, I like the over here. You have 2 games in Notre Dame and Florida that I think are the hardest tests on your schedule, but you do have other games that could push to the under. And all it takes, obviously, is 3 losses. So it could be one of those things where they do hit the under because there are teams that are better than expected. But I trust what Mario Cristobal is doing. I trust that this team has the talent to be able to make that run. And then at that point, you just have to see what happens after that in the ACC championship. Hopefully that's going to be against Clemson if we are correct on Clemson. And that would be a really intriguing matchup. NC State is looking to bounce back in 2025. It was not a good year in 2024, and they get a chance at revenge in the first game of the season. Now, how they perform against ECU will tell us a lot. You do get Virginia early in the season, so you do have a conference opponent really early. You get Virginia. You also get Wake Forest and Duke and Virginia Tech. So you have multiple conference games right off the bat. We're going to know pretty quick where this team stands within the conference. You then get Campbell to start the beginning of October before you go to Notre Dame and to Pitt. And then the final stretch includes Georgia Tech, Miami, Florida State, and North Carolina. If CJ Bailey truly is the real deal, if this defense can get back to being the stifling defense we once saw, then the over will definitely hit. Right now, I would probably lean the under. I don't know if this team has the confidence in them right now. That being said, they can get 5 wins in the first half of the season. It'll just be tough for them to find 2 more in the second half. North Carolina having an over-under of 7.5 is definitely the Bill Belichick lean, the nudge, if you will. I don't know if this is a team that can win 7.5 games. Now, we're going to find out a lot about this program early in the season. The home game against TCU will tell us a lot about where this program stands. After that, you should find 3 wins with Charlotte, Richmond, and UCF. Unless UCF is much better than expected, North Carolina should be sitting at 3-1 before they ultimately lose to Clemson. So you're sitting at 3-2, but then after that, you get Cal, Virginia, Syracuse, Stanford, and Wake Forest. Those are all winnable games. So while it may seem kind of ridiculous to have an over-under of 7.5, there are winnable games against teams that should be near the bottom or taking a step back. You then host Duke before you go to NC State. So you don't have to face Louisville. You don't have to face Miami. You don't have to face SMU. You're avoiding some of the bigger names in this conference, and that's why it sits at 7.5. I would probably still lean under right now. I think there's a lot to sort out with both sides of the football. But again, if Belichick can prove that he is a good college coach, then you shouldn't have any problem seeing the overhit. Pitt's an intriguing team because last year you saw that hot start before they kind of struggled towards the end. If they can avoid a fall off like that, this schedule should give them opportunity to do that, but it'll allow them to finish the year strong, especially with the final 3 games. You get Duquesne, Central Michigan, and then the backyard brawl with West Virginia. Those would be really fun games to watch. Pitt should be able to go 3-0, but the West Virginia game will provide some challenges. You then get Louisville at home, so that will be a tough one to win. The Cardinals are definitely going to be one of the better teams in the conference, but if Pitt's able to find a way to win those games, you feel confident about what they can do in the next ones. Boston College should be a win for Pitt if they're playing at the level that they're capable of. A road trip to Florida State and then Syracuse as well is going to be a tough 2-game stretch. Florida State's looking to bounce back, and they sit at the same win total as Pitt right now. So that's going to be a tough game and one that could dictate which one of these teams actually gets to a bowl game, but also if they're able to hit the over or under. Then after that, you get NC State and Stanford. NC State, if they bounce back, could be a tough one as well. Again, same win total. So you have a number of teams that sit with that same win total with similar goals. Then you get Stanford. Again, Stanford is going to be really tough, but that is a road trip. So that's going to be a tough game as well. The nice thing is you 2 weeks off before you host Notre Dame, and then you go to Georgia Tech and host Miami. So if you haven't hit that win total by mid-November, you're probably not going to hit it. That being said, when you look at if you're able to start the year 3-0, even if you lose to the Cardinals at the end of September, you feel confident about what they could do to get to 7 wins. When you look at Stanford, NC State, Syracuse, Florida State, Boston College, those are 5 games to get 4 more wins. And this is a team that if they're playing, if Eli Holstein and that offense are playing how they did in the beginning of 2024 this year, you feel confident about their ability to get to 7 wins in 2025. SMU's kind of tough. You have a team that definitely surprised a lot of people, made it to the college football playoff, and Rhett Lashlee deserves a lot of credit for that success. That being said, finding a way to repeat that success might be difficult. East Texas A&M starts the year. You'll start the year 1-0. Then you host Baylor. That will be a very tough game for SMU to win. Having Kevin Jennings back is really nice, but it's a Baylor team that also has their starting quarterback and is looking to do big things in 2025. A road trip to Missouri State is before a road trip to TCU. That's another tough game for this team. You then get Syracuse and Stanford before you get a rematch of the ACC championship game with the Clemson Tigers on October 18th. After that, you have a couple other tough tests for different reasons. You get Wake Forest. That's not really a tough one unless the Demon Deacons are better than expected. You host Miami. That is a team that is looking to compete at the top of the conference. You go to Boston College. That's always a tough place to play. Hosting Louisville at home will make it a little bit easier, but the Cardinals should be pretty good. And you finish the year with a road trip to Cal. That's tough. When you look at their ability to beat this over-under, 8-4 is definitely a possibility. You just have to find, I feel confident in most of the games. Baylor, TCU, Clemson, Miami, and Louisville will be the 5 big games. If you're able to avoid losing 2 of those, then great. But again, you do not have the surprise factor. So I'm very intrigued to see how Rhett Lashlee is able to get his team to reset their mindset for this year and how they're able to surprise teams once again. Stanford is going to go through some struggles. I'll just say it right off the bat. The first game against Hawaii is going to be challenging. And if they lose that game, I don't feel that it's probably, if they lose the game against Hawaii, it's going to be easiest under of all time. There's not a ton of games that I feel confident that this team can win right now. And if they surprise people, then We'll see. But you do have a BYU team that it's also another road test. So you could start the year 0-2. Boston College, Virginia, San Jose State. Again, those teams in the past, you wouldn't even bat an eye at Stanford beating, but it's a very different era. You then go to SMU, host Florida State, go to Miami. Again, really tough. And honestly, we don't really need to go too deep in the schedule. Pitt, North Carolina, Cal, and Notre Dame to end the year. I would lean the under right now. There's so much uncertainty with this program, and it's really hard to see them getting 4 or 5 wins. Syracuse is going through a bit of a transition. The quarterback position will kind of dictate how we feel about this team. The Tennessee game is still going to be challenging to start the year, but without Nico Iamaleava, you're feeling a little bit better if you're Syracuse. But again, kind of like SMU, you don't have that surprise factor anymore. You then host UConn. That is a tough team to beat. And even though Syracuse is the better team, UConn has the ability to pull off an upset. You'll get your for sure first win if you don't have it already when you play Colgate. Then you go to Clemson, host Duke, to SMU, host Pitt, to Georgia Tech. I don't love that 5-game stretch. I don't love what that means for Syracuse in terms of getting to a bowl game, but there are some opportunities for them to compete. And if Fran Brown can pull off some magic again, you feel confident about what this team could do this year. North Carolina to Miami, to Notre Dame, and Boston College is how you end the year. Making a bowl game is going to be tough. You probably will beat UConn. You'll probably beat, you're going to beat Colgate. The other games that I feel confident they can win are really just Boston College and Pitt. I think that this team is going to have a lot of coin flip games and games that they're going to have to pull off upsets, namely the Clemson, Miami, and Notre Dame games. Even you could throw Georgia Tech and Tennessee in there as well. So those are already 5 games that you're not quite sure about, and everything else besides Colgate might feel like a coin flip. So I'd probably lean the under right now, but that doesn't speak to the confidence that I still have in this program. Tony Elliott had a pretty good offseason, and that's the reason why this over-under is sitting at 6.5. Virginia, Pitt, NC State, Florida State, and Duke all have the same win total, and that speaks to what this program has been doing. And if they're able to get off to a hot start, because you get Coastal Carolina, NC State, William & Mary, and Stanford right off the bat, that's a potential 4-0 start. We'll obviously not get too far ahead of ourselves, but if you're sitting at 4-0, 4 games into the season, then you're feeling confident about the potential over to hit. Now, you do have to host Florida State, go to Louisville, and you host Washington State after that before finishing in October with a road trip to North Carolina. You then go cross country to Cal, host Wake Forest, go to Duke, and host Virginia Tech. So again, kind of similar to other teams, you don't see Clemson, you don't see Miami, and you don't see SMU. Those are 3 teams that if you're looking for wins, you want to avoid those teams. And Virginia has that. So the schedule is there for them to be really successful. It's just going to come down to how do you beat some of the teams like an NC State? How do you compete against Florida State, North Carolina, Duke, Virginia Tech, those NC State? Those are going to be the games that really tell us if this team is a 7-5 team or if they're going to be an under. Now, you can still make a bowl game at 6-6. So that should be the goal. I would probably honestly lean under right now, but I could see the over hitting as well. I would just lean under. Virginia Tech needs a big year, and it might be tough to find that momentum, especially early on. You have a neutral site game against South Carolina before you host Vanderbilt. That's a tough way to start your season. You then get Old Dominion and Wofford to get 2 wins on the belt, onto the win column. I think you feel confident about this team's ability to do that. It's just going to come down to, is that your first and second wins, or is that second and third, or if you're really surprised, third and fourth? I don't think that's really going to happen. I think that this is a team that will probably lose to South Carolina right off the bat. The Vanderbilt game feels more of a coin flip. You go to NC State and host Wake Forest before you go to Georgia Tech and host Cal to end October. And then the month of November will really test this team. If this team has not hit their over 6.5 wins by this point, it'll be tough. Louisville, at Florida State, Miami, and at Virginia. There are winnable games. That is for sure. It's just going to come down, is this offense truly better? Is Kyron Jones going to figure things out? There's a lot of pressure on this team to win, and you don't face some of the tougher teams. You don't see Clemson, you don't see SMU, but Georgia Tech, Florida State, and Miami as well as Louisville are all on this schedule, and you have teams like South Carolina to start the year, it might be tough for this team to find some momentum. Wake Forest is going through a transition, and it's really hard to win with this program. Jake Dicker has a lot of work to do, and he has a roster that needs to get sorted out. The schedule does give them a little bit of a break, though. So an over of 4.5 feels where I'm leaning right now. I'd say that that's probably what I'd go with if it's Wake Forest. Kennesaw State and Western Carolina give you a 2-0 start. Hosting NC State and Georgia Tech will be tough, but that's a little bit easier than having to go to those programs. Then you get 2 road trips to Virginia Tech and Oregon State. Those are another 2 games that Wake Forest could surprise some people there. You then host SMU before going to Florida State and Virginia, host North Carolina, host Delaware, and go to Duke. So Kennesaw State, Western Carolina, and Delaware are 3 wins for sure. And with the remaining 9 games, you just have to find a way to win 2. I like the over here. I like what this team could do, and they could surprise some people this year. And finally, they're not in the conference, even though they might as well be. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish over-under is set at 10.5. They start the year with a road trip to Miami before hosting Texas A&M. That is a tough 2-game stretch, but it's going to tell us if this team is a legitimate contender. It's also going to tell us if that over or under is going to hit. If you start the year with 1 loss, I don't know if I have a ton of confidence in this team to not lose another one. That being said, the schedule should give you plenty of opportunities to win 11 or 12 games. Now, 12-0 is going to be tough, but if you find a way to start 2-0, you feel pretty confident about what this team can do. After that, you host Purdue, go to Arkansas. Keep an eye on Arkansas for a team that could surprise some people this year. Boise State and NC State at home is feeling like 2 wins. I don't have too many concerns about that, even with Boise State making the playoff last year. USC is where things get interesting. We obviously have talked a ton about that rivalry as the offseason has progressed. That could be an intriguing one to watch. If USC is better, that's really where this over gets a little bit dicey. Honestly, before I even go to their schedule, I'm feeling like this is going to be an under. 10.5 is just a huge number to hit, and with some really tough teams on this schedule, even with overall the schedule being fairly manageable, it's tough to see this team winning 11 and definitely not 12 games. You go to Boston College, you host Navy, you go to Pitt, host Syracuse, and go to Stanford. Again, I feel confident about their ability to win all 5 of those, but how they really, we're going to know the win total if you're going to hit the over or the under early in the season. By the time the USC game is done, we're going to know pretty much if that one's going to cash over or under. So right now, purely just because it feels like it's so high, 10.5 just feels too high to bet the over. So purely just from, it feels like just a smart thing to do, I'm going to bet the under. But this is going to be an intriguing conference. Notre Dame is going to be really fun to watch, and it'll be fun to see which one of these win totals truly does hit.